The crash in the desert. The thunderstorm had been raging over the Nevada desert for 3 hours when Jake Morrison first saw the impossible lights cutting through the darkness. As the owner of Morrison's Salvage and Repair, he'd seen plenty of aircraft in distress over the years, but nothing that moved like this craft, dancing between lightning bolts with impossible grace. Jake pressed his weathered face against the workshop window, watching the strange vessel spiral downward in controlled chaos. Its hull gleamed with colors that shouldn't exist, shifting between deep purple and brilliant silver as it fought against Earth's gravity. The crash came with a sound like breaking crystal mixed with thunder, somewhere beyond the old mining ridge. About 2 miles from his shop dock by morning, the storm had passed, leaving the desert air crisp and clean. Jake loaded his truck with basic tools and headed toward the crash site, following the trail of scorched earth and twisted metal fragments. What he found defied every law of physics he thought he understood. The ship sat partially buried in red sand, its organic curves suggesting it had been grown rather than built. Steam rose from its hull in patterns that almost looked like breathing. Jake circled the craft carefully, noting how the metal seemed to repair itself in small places. Hairline cracks sealing with tiny sparks of blue energy. That's when he heard the voice behind him, musical and strained with pain. "Please, I need your help." Jake spun around to find himself facing the most beautiful and terrifying sight of his life. The woman stood about 5.5 feet tall, her skin bearing a faint luminescent quality that made her seem to glow from within. Her hair was white as starlight, and her eyes held depths that reminded him of looking into clear ocean water. But it was her ears, pointed and delicate, and the strange markings along her arms that told him she wasn't human. "You're not from around here," Jake said, surprised by how calm his voice sounded. "No," she replied, her accent carrying musical tones he'd never heard before. "My name is Zephyra. I'm from a world your people call Kepler 442b, though we know it as Ethros Prime. My ship is dying, and I have information that could save both our worlds." Jake studied her face, looking for deception, but finding only desperate honesty. "What kind of information?" "Your government has been secretly negotiating with my people's enemies, a faction that sees Earth as nothing more than a resource to be harvested. They're coming, and they're bringing weapons that could turn your entire planet into a mining operation." The sound of distant helicopters began to echo across the desert. Zephyra's luminescent skin flickered with alarm as she turned toward the approaching aircraft. "They found us faster than I expected," she said, her voice tight with fear. "Please, if you have any compassion for your species, help me repair my ship. The data I carry contains the location of their staging areas and the timeline for invasion. It's the only chance either of our worlds has." Jake looked at the approaching helicopters, then at the impossible ship, then at Zephyr's pleading eyes. 47 years of fixing broken things had taught him to recognize when something was worth saving. "Get in the truck," he said. Underground. Sanctuary Jake's underground bunker had taken him 15 years to build, carved into the bedrock beneath his salvage yard with paranoid precision. As government helicopters circled overhead like mechanical vultures, he led Zephyra through hidden passages that would have impressed any conspiracy theorist. "You built all this yourself?" Zephyra asked, her luminescent markings casting strange shadows on the tunnel walls as they descended deeper underground. "After the military tried to classify my work on experimental aircraft in '98, I decided to prepare for unwanted visitors," Jake replied, sealing the entrance behind them with a blast door that looked like it belonged on a submarine. "Down here, we're invisible to thermal scanning and most forms of electromagnetic detection." The main chamber opened into a surprisingly sophisticated workshop. Banks of computers hummed alongside traditional metalworking equipment, while screens displayed real-time feeds from dozens of hidden cameras positioned around his property. Jake had spent years collecting salvaged military hardware, turning his bunker into a fortress that could support 2 people for months. Zephyra moved to one of the computer terminals, her fingers dancing across the keyboard with inhuman speed. "Your primitive networks are remarkably complex for such a young civilization," she murmured, lines of code scrolling across multiple screens. "I can access your government's classified communications from here." "Hey now, that's highly illegal." "Surveillance equipment," Jake protested weakly. "And right now, it's showing us that 3 different agencies are converging on this location." Zephyra's voice carried grim satisfaction as encrypted messages appeared on screen. "The interesting part is that they're not coordinating with each other. Your military, your intelligence services, and something called Majestic 12 are all operating independently." Jake felt his blood run cold. Majestic 12 isn't supposed to exist anymore. According to these communications, they've been in secret contact with the Vorthic Empire for 8 months. The same faction that destroyed my ship and killed my research team. Zephyra's luminescent markings flared brighter with emotion. "They're trading Earth's strategic resources for alien technology, not understanding that they're negotiating with slavers." The screen suddenly filled with tactical maps showing search patterns spreading outward from the crash site. Jake counted at least 40 vehicles involved in the operation, moving with military precision through the desert terrain. "We need to get your ship operational," Jake said, pulling up schematics on his main workstation. "But first, I need to understand what we're working with. Your ship's technology operates on principles that don't exist in human science." Zephyra moved beside him, her proximity making the air itself seem to hum with energy. "Etherian ships are biological constructs, grown from crystalline organisms that exist in harmony with quantum fields. They don't require fuel in the way you understand it. They process ambient energy from space itself." "That explains why your hull was self-repairing," Jake muttered, his engineer's mind racing through possibilities. But the damage looked extensive. What kind of weapons could hurt something like that? Vorthic weaponry specifically designed to disrupt biological systems. They call them life reapers, energy weapons that turn an organism's own cellular structure against itself. Zephyra's expression darkened. "My ship, Whisper Wind, is fighting a losing battle against that corruption. Without intervention, she'll die within 72 hours. Jake pulled up satellite imagery of the crash site, noting how the government teams were establishing a perimeter rather than immediately investigating the ship itself. "They're waiting for something. Specialized equipment, maybe. Or specialists. Or Vorthic technical advisors," Zephyra said quietly. "The corruption in my ship systems could be valuable to them. They might try to extract and study it rather than simply destroying the evidence." The bunker's proximity alarms began chiming softly. On the surface cameras, Jake could see figures in hazmat suits approaching his workshop with scanning equipment. They moved with the careful coordination of people who knew exactly what they were looking for. "Time to go mobile," Jake announced, beginning to pack essential tools and supplies. "I've got bolt holes scattered across 3 states, but first, we need to reach your ship after dark." "Jake," Zephyra said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones, "I need you to understand something. If we succeed in repairing Whisper Wind, there's no going back to your old life. The moment we broadcast the Vorthic invasion data to your world's leaders, both of us become permanent targets." Jake shouldered his pack and checked the charge on his plasma cutter, a piece of salvaged alien technology he'd never expected to actually need. "Lady, my old life ended the moment I decided to help you. Now let's go save both our worlds." Night repairs under fire. The Nevada desert at night was a cathedral of stars. But Jake and Zephyra moved through it like ghosts, avoiding the search patterns that swept the landscape with methodical precision. Government teams had established a secure perimeter around Whisper Wind. But they'd made the mistake of assuming human tactical thinking would apply to alien rescue operations. Your people are thorough but predictable, Zephyra whispered as they crouched behind an outcrop of red stone, watching sentries patrol in perfect geometric patterns. They're thinking in terms of preventing escape, not understanding that Etherean ships can interface with their operators across significant distances. Jake unfolded a custom scanner built from salvaged military hardware, its screen showing heat signatures and electromagnetic fields in real time. 20 guards, plus whatevers, in those armored vehicles. And there's something else, energy readings that don't match human technology. Zephyra's luminescent markings pulsed with alarm as she studied Jake's readings. Vorthic detection grid. They've installed their equipment alongside your government's setup. This complicates things significantly. How so? Vorthic technology can sense Etherean biosignatures from considerable distances. The moment I get close enough to interface with Whisper Wind, they'll know exactly where we are. Zephyra touched Jake's scanner, her contact causing the device to display new information layers. However, your primitive electronics seem to be invisible to their detection systems. Jake grinned in the starlight. Primitive has its advantages. What do you need me to do? Whisper Wind's corruption is spreading from her quantum core outward. If you can reach the ship's dorsal access port with this, Zephyra handed him a crystalline device that pulsed with inner light. I can guide the repair process remotely through quantum entanglement. The plan required Jake to circle wide around the government perimeter, using maintenance tunnels from the old mining operation to approach Whisper Wind from an unexpected angle. Zephyra would monitor communications and provide tactical guidance through a quantum link established by touching the crystal device. One problem, Jake said, studying the approach routes. Those Vorthic sensors you mentioned. Won't they detect the quantum entanglement between you and the crystal? Zephyra's smile was radiant in the darkness. That's where human ingenuity becomes valuable. Your species has a natural resistance to quantum observation effects. Something about the chaotic nature of human consciousness creates interference patterns that Vorthic sensors can't properly interpret. Jake crawled through mining tunnels that hadn't seen human presence in decades, following memorized maps while the crystal device provided gentle directional pulses. Above him, he could hear the rumble of heavy machinery as government teams continued their methodical search patterns. The tunnel emerged 50 meters from Whisper Wind's landing site, hidden behind a cluster of mining equipment that had been abandoned for 30 years. Jake could see the ship clearly now, and the sight made his heart ache. What had been beautiful and organic was now wounded and dying, her hull covered in spreading patches of sickly green corruption that pulsed like infected wounds. I see it, Jake whispered to the crystal device, Zephyra's voice emerging from its depths like a distant song. The corruption is worse than I feared. We have perhaps 30 minutes before it reaches her core consciousness. Jake, when you make contact with the access port, you're going to experience a direct neural interface with Whisper Wind herself. It may be overwhelming. Define overwhelming. Imagine suddenly being able to perceive 11 dimensions simultaneously, while processing the emotional history of a 1,000-year-old living ship who's currently dying in agony. Jake checked his equipment one more time, including the plasma cutter that might be his only weapon against both human and alien threats. You know what? After today, I'm definitely asking for hazard pay. He sprinted across open ground, diving and rolling behind Whisper Wind's bulk, just as a searchlight swept the area. The ship's hull was warm to the touch, and Jake could swear. He felt a heartbeat pulsing through the organic metal. The access port was exactly where Zephyra had described, a sealed opening that dilated like an iris when he pressed the crystal device against its center. The neural interface hit him like lightning, filling his mind with sensations that had no human equivalent. For a terrifying moment, Jake was the ship, feeling the vorthic corruption eating away at his quantum core like acid, experiencing the slow dissolution of consciousness that had spanned centuries of travel between stars. But beneath the pain, he found something else, fierce determination, and a desperate love for the small, luminescent being who had been Whisperwind's companion for so long. The ship was willing to die to protect Zephyra and complete their mission to warn Earth. "Not on my watch," Jake growled, beginning the repair sequence as alarms started blaring across the government compound. The data that changes everything. Neural interface with Whisperwind revealed truths that shattered Jake's understanding of Earth's place in the galaxy. As his consciousness merged temporarily with the dying ship's quantum awareness, he experienced memories spanning decades of interstellar politics, seeing Earth through the eyes of civilizations that considered humanity barely more than clever. Animals. "Jake, you need to download the invasion data now." Zephyra's voice came through the quantum link, tight with urgency. "Government forces are converging on your position, and I'm detecting vorthic battle pods approaching from orbit." Through Whisperwind's enhanced senses, Jake could perceive the true scope of the threat facing Earth. The vorthic Empire hadn't just made contact with human governments. They'd been orchestrating a careful deception for months, presenting themselves as benevolent traders while secretly mapping Earth's defenses and cataloging its resources. The data flowing through the ship's dying neural networks painted a horrifying picture. Earth's major military installations had been infiltrated by Vorthak observation devices. Key political leaders had been influenced through subtle psychological manipulation techniques. Most terrifying of all, the alien empire had been gradually introducing technological dependencies that would make human resistance nearly impossible. "They're not planning invasion," Jake realized, his voice echoing strangely through the ship's organic communication systems. "They're planning harvest. They want humanity intact, but completely dependent on their technology." "Exactly, Zephyra." "Confirmed. The Vorthek call it cultural harvesting. They preserve the creative and innovative aspects of a species while eliminating their capacity for independent technological development. Earth's human population would become a permanent source of novel solutions to complex problems." Jake's hands moved across Whisperwind's control surfaces with growing confidence, the neural interface teaching him to operate systems that existed beyond human science. The ship's quantum core was stabilizing, but the effort was draining his mental energy at an alarming rate. Through the ship's external sensors, he watched Vorthic battle pods descending through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Each pod contained advanced weaponry specifically designed to disable human military equipment while leaving infrastructure intact. The invasion wasn't scheduled to begin for another 6 months, but Whisperwind's survival had forced them to accelerate their timeline. "Jake, I'm uploading the complete intelligence package to your planet's communication networks," Zephyra announced. "Every major government, military organization, and media outlet will receive detailed proof of the Vorthek deception within the next few minutes." Won't they just claim it's fake? Alien disinformation? That's where the beauty of human paranoia becomes an asset. "I'm including technical specifications that will allow your people to detect Vorthik surveillance devices. Once world leaders realize their private communications have been monitored for months, they'll have to acknowledge the threat is real." Jake felt Whisperwind's consciousness strengthening as the repair process reached completion. The ship's gratitude flowed through their neural connection like warm sunlight, carrying with it memories of her homeworld, vast oceans beneath triple suns, cities that grew from living coral, people who moved through water and space with equal grace. "We did it," Jake breathed, watching the green corruption fade from Whisperwind's hull as her quantum core resumed full functionality. "She's going to live." "And now comes the difficult part," Zephyra replied through their quantum link. "The Vorthik pods are targeting both of us specifically. They know that as long as we survive, we can continue exposing their infiltration network. Jake, I need you to understand, this is no longer about repairing my ship. This is about starting humanity's first interstellar war. Earth of the Terran Defense Alliance. 3 months after the Night of Falling Stars, as historians would later call it, Jake Morrison stood in a conference room beneath the Pentagon, surrounded by the most powerful military leaders on Earth. The man who had once run a small salvage operation in the Nevada desert was now humanity's foremost expert on alien technology. His neural interface experience with Whisper Wind having provided insights that no human scientist could have achieved. Through conventional study, the latest intelligence from our Aetherian allies confirms our worst fears. Jake announced, activating a holographic display that showed the spiral arm of the galaxy with Earth at its center. The Vorthek Empire has formed what they call the Convergence, an alliance of 7 different species, all focused on harvesting human creativity and technological innovation. General Patricia Hayes, the newly appointed head of the Terran Defense Alliance, studied the tactical display with the intensity of someone who understood that humanity's survival hung in the balance. What makes human innovation so valuable? To them? According to Zephora's research, most species in our galactic neighborhood develop along predictable technological paths. They optimize for efficiency and stability, but they lose the ability to generate truly revolutionary breakthroughs. Jake manipulated the display to show comparative technological development curves. Humans are chaotic, unpredictable, and we refuse to accept that problems can't be solved. That makes us either incredibly valuable or incredibly dangerous. The room filled with representatives from every major Earth government buzzed with nervous energy. The revelation that alien civilizations had been observing human development for decades had shattered traditional geopolitical boundaries. Nations that had been enemies for generations found themselves working together against an existential threat that made their previous conflicts seem petty. What's our current defensive capability? Asked Dr. Liu Chun, the Chinese physicist who had successfully reverse-engineered Vorthek shield technology using data from Jake's neural interface sessions. Better than anyone expected? Jake replied with grim satisfaction. The Vorthek made one critical miscalculation. They assumed human. Military technology would remain static during their infiltration period. They didn't account for how quickly we adapt when we're properly motivated. The holographic display shifted to show Earth's orbital defense grid, a network of stations that had been constructed with unprecedented international cooperation. Using hybrid human Aetherian technology, the stations could detect and engage Vorthek vessels at ranges that exceeded anything the alien empire had encountered before. The Convergence expected to face primitive kinetic weapons and crude nuclear devices, Jake continued. Instead, they're dealing with quantum torpedoes, plasma shields, and detection systems that can track ships moving through folded space-time. Zephira materialized in the room through a holographic projector, her luminescent features carrying the weight of someone who had witnessed the destruction of 3 worlds by Vorthek forces. The first Convergence battle fleet will arrive in your solar system within 6 months. Our intelligence suggests they're bringing approximately 400 vessels, including several planet killers. Planet killers? General Hayes asked. Weapons capable of cracking a world's crust and extracting its core materials for processing, Zephyr explained. The Vorthek use them when a species proves too difficult to harvest intact. Jake felt the familiar tingle of quantum entanglement. As Whisper Wind, now orbiting Earth as part of the defense fleet, shared tactical data through their permanent neural link. The ship had become humanity's first true starship, her organic technology enhanced with human engineering innovations that even the Aetherians found surprising. The good news is that we're not facing this alone, Jake announced. 3 other species have agreed to join what we're calling the Liberation Coalition. The Convergence's expansion has made enemies across half the galaxy. The display showed new tactical positions as Allied fleets moved toward Earth's solar system. The Catherian hive mind contributed vessels that could operate in perfect coordination. The Nexari Republic brought weapons that could disrupt Vorthak neural control systems. Most importantly, the ancient progenitor race had emerged from self-imposed isolation, bringing technology that predated the Convergence by millions of years. Military doctrine is already influencing our allies' tactical thinking, Zephyr reported. Your species' approach to asymmetric warfare and technological improvisation is providing solutions to problems that have stymied galactic military strategists for centuries. General Hayes leaned forward, her expression carrying the weight of we. Command in humanity's darkest hour. What are our chances? Jake considered the question, feeling Whisperwind's consciousness touch his mind with reassurance and determination. Through their bond, he could sense the growing network of human-alien cooperation that spanned the solar system, feel the fierce resolve of a species that had never learned to surrender. 6 months ago, I was fixing broken radios in a desert. Salvage yard, Jake said finally. Today, I'm coordinating humanity's first interstellar military alliance. If that doesn't tell you something about human potential, nothing will. The Convergence was coming to harvest Earth's creativity and independence. Instead, they would face something they had never encountered before, a united human race that refused to be anything less than free. The Terran Empire wasn't born from conquest or expansion. It was born from the simple human conviction that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the odds. And Jake Morrison, former salvage operator turned interstellar war coordinator, knew that humanity's greatest adventures were just beginning.